Hey, good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome from Peachtree Corners, Georgia. I'm going to say it, the peachiest place on the planet, bar none. And tonight we have a very, very, very special guest, Coach Phil Jikes, and really looking forward to having him explain what he's doing as a coach, a mentor. He's been doing this like 35 plus years, man. He's like has a career going here in business. He's worked in manufacturing, printing, graphics, real estate, healthcare professionals, selling, you name it. He's done it all. He's worked with CEOs, he's worked with athletes, he works with everyday Joes like you and me. Focal Point, he's got a coaching platform there. We're going to talk about all this stuff that Phil's been doing and to take all that tutelage and knowledge that he's established through the years. He's even stepped up and he's got his own program, a virtual program. I'll let him talk to us about that as well. I mean, is there nothing this gentleman can do? But before I bring him on, I'm going to give my shout outs. The Seller Die Hard, the 959ers, the emerging sales winners, I'll put the other one out there. We'll come back to all that later on. No, just kidding. The other thing I wanted to say, it'll come to me in a second, guys. I just lost it here. But I mentioned Seller Die Hards and the 959ers, the Megamind Pro. That's what I was waiting for. Excuse me as I stammered here. But let's bring Phil on and let's hear what he has to say about being a coach. And the one thing that always impresses me about a coach, when you're serious about success, there's no off season. So with that, let's bring on Phil and let's hear what he has to say.
Wow, what an introduction! I'm humbled.
Well, we're glad to have you here, Phil. I mean, it takes a guy from where you're not even in the country, and I can't get people here. I'm challenging everybody in Peachtree Corners. Tell us where you're from.
I'm in a little place called, it's not that little, Calgary, Alberta, Canada, which is on the western side of Canada. We're just where I'm at in Alberta. We're north of Montana and Idaho. It'll give you guys an idea of roughly where we are far west. And if I was to drive down to the border between Canada and the U.S., be about a 3.5 hour drive.
Wow. Incredible. Incredible. Before we get into it here, we got a few hellos and highs. Alan's saying hi to us. Thank you for joining us this evening, everybody. Feel free to share this out if you choose to. That's up to you. We know you have better things to do, other things to do, I should say, and we appreciate you all being here. Randy Chafee, thank you. Hey, there you go, Coach Phil. See, everybody knows you as Coach Phil, and we could talk about the other Coach Phil, right? There was some basketball player, and then he became a coach of some team in Chicago and L.A., and we'll let all that go. Hey, Scott, hello. And then here we got Ronnie Goodwin, imported talent. There you go, man. Mr. Goodwin with that New England wit that he has, what can I say? But Phil, could you tell us, did you always want to be a coach? Like, I know you did other things in your career, but was that always in the back of your mind, or how did this happen?
No, it wasn't always in the back of my mind. When I first started out with a job, a career, I was just trying to figure out how I can make some money per hour, and I got into the printing business and kind of like that for a while and learned that trade and ended up becoming a partner in a small print shop and realized that.
You see what Ronnie said here? He goes, dimwit, he's messing with you.
I know, but he's Irish, so he's allowed to do that. But it started, well, actually, the coaching thing, no, didn't know about that. And matter of fact, there's a whole bunch of things that are going in my head. So to respond to your coaching thing, I used to play hockey quite a lot, because being Canadian, that's one of our favorite pastimes. And I had a coach when I was playing juvenile hockey, which is kind of the same as junior. They don't call it that anymore, but so you're about 17 or 18. And the coach was like 2, 3, 4 years older than us. And he had been drafted by a hockey team in the Western, in actually the CHL, the Canadian Hockey League, which is where it's a development league for future NHLers. And
Right.
he was a really good goaltender, but his parents wouldn't let him go and play in that level. So he came out to be a coach. And I remember having a conversation with him saying, "What are you, nuts? What do you want to be a coach for?" So to say that coaching was on my radar, it wasn't. I was thinking, you got to play, you got to be the guy, you got to be the girl, you got to participate. Don't be a coach. That's a lame job. Well, but I learned afterwards I was wrong. And it's not a lame responsibility. I've coached athletes in hockey, business owners, entrepreneurs, salespeople, a variety of different people, a variety of different things, helping people get. They've been laid off and they wanted to find a new career. I've helped them in that process. So I learned that what makes my heart sing is helping people get their light bulb moments, I guess is the best way to say it. It's their ahas, their BFOs, blinding flash of the obvious. Have them have a wish that they. One of my clients from a few years ago had an accounting practice in our city where I'm at, and wanted to live half the time in a tropical climate because you don't have snow in the tropical climate. So she wanted to be out of that space. And my first reactions in the early days of being a business coach under the Focal Point banner was, "What are you, nuts? That's a crazy." I never said this out loud. I internalized. And I thought, wait a minute, it's not my job to judge. My job is to help them get to where it is they want to get to. So in less than 12 months, she was able to find a way to get herself there and live the life and live the dream. So those kind of things are what crank me up. And if you go to my LinkedIn, you can see my LinkedIn profile. You can see what people are saying about that. And actually, she's on there. Then you get the whole story versus me trying to. I don't want to eat up all our time here. So if that kind of interests you and you want to find out a bit more about her story, you can see what she posted about how she went from a dream and a wish to reality. She's still there today. She lives in Cancun.
Outstanding. Hey, Phil, could you tell us what do you think makes a good coach? I mean, I'm sure you have to work at that like anything else. But, when people say, hey, he's a coach or a mentor or, like just I look back at the analogy of me when my boys were younger. They were into sports and all that. So I kind of guided them and then got out of the way and plugged them into other people that really knew what they were doing as they got into high school or even college. But what do you think is the one ingredient? Is there one, or what makes a good coach? What do they have the ability to do?
So you talked about your boys and you coached them and helped them a little bit, and then
Right.
you elevated them up to somebody else that could give them something. What was it that those other people helped your boys with that you really liked?
I would probably say not just the game itself, but mentally how to deal with things and how to deal with failure. Like baseball's got an adage, fail your way to success at the plate. I mean, that's pretty much what you do. You have to understand that you're going to go, maybe if you're lucky, 1 for 3. You may go 0 for 3. You may go 0 for 5, depending on how long the game goes. And learning how to deal with that and not personally beat yourself up. That's kind of what I noticed, from the
Right.
better coaches that they had. It wasn't
Right.
just all about how to play the sport.
And you being the father, you had an emotional attachment to your boys. So
Yes.
to give them tough love at a level of excellence for sport would be harder for you to do, probably, because you'd have a bias versus somebody who's an independent coach that really respects them and wants to elevate their game. They probably challenge them in a way that you probably wouldn't do. Does that be fair?
Oh, absolutely.
That's what a good coach does.
Okay. Okay. Well, there you go. I asked the question and I guess I answered my own question. 310 live time. We'll get you there in the Hall of Fame. Yeah. Thank you, Tony. That's true. And Ronnie, I'll go, I digress. He says, help them get their shit together. Yeah, that's true too, Ronnie. Lord knows we had enough prayer meetings at those teenage years. Um, and now both my sons realize that, hey, dad wasn't such a bad guy, but it happens.
That's one of the things as a metaphor that I use to position the value of coaching. And this probably worked with you. So I'm going to so if you and I were working together and I wanted to make sure that you were tuned in to what we're going to do, I would ask, what was it like when your boys were young? Were they sponges and wanted to know everything, and everything you said, they just, oh, Dad, you're right. This is so good. For a while when they were kids, were they like that? And then, like you said, then they grow up to be teenagers. You have to do a little bit of prayer to get you through that, because they started to know things that you knew that they didn't really know, but they were testing you, right?
Absolutely.
And then they grow up to be wonderful human beings. Would that be right?
That's about right.
So when I work with a client, I let them know that you're going to go through that same process of the child, the teenager, and the wonderful adult. So when you're in a teenage stage, don't worry. I'm here to help you get to that next level.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. So tell me about this, Phil. I got to ask you this. Focal Point Coaching and Training. How did you get involved with that? I know it's affiliated with Brian Tracy, but what made you go that direction?
Do you want the short story or the longer one?
You can give me in between story.
Okay, just be respectful of the time. So what happened is, in the early 90s, I was in a position where I was brokenhearted, no money, no place to live. Thank goodness I had family.
That sounds familiar. What is that, like a 90s thing for us? Or
I think so, yeah. So I made some decisions. I didn't have some goals, and I should have got a job. If you say should fast enough, say should 5 times fast, and let me know what happens. Just play with me, would you?
Okay. Should.
What does that kind of sound like?
Like
That bad word, right?
Yeah.
So stop shoulding on yourselves.
Okay.
So what I found out was that I listened to my intuition, my instinct, and what I did, instead of getting a job, I created a business. And as a result of that, the house I'm in, the coaching I'm doing, the people I've helped, the experiences I've had, it's been amazing. So if you go after what you really, really want, you're more likely to advance to be a better human being, because you'll grow into it. That's kind of where I was in the 90s. And I wasn't coaching then. I was looking for a way to start a business from a place where you don't have the typical capital. I had sweat equity capital. And so how could I creatively make that happen? So basically, I had a mantra, and I still have it today, and I use it in my coaching practice with all of my clients. And that is, if you know what you want and why you want it, and stifle the how, and keep focused on what you really want to get to, and don't worry about the current reality. Be concerned, but don't worry about it, because worrying is nothing more than negative goal setting. We can invent things along the way. We'll meet somebody, read a book, make a connection. Like we all went through something last year in about a few months. It would be the full year, right? So this COVID-19 thing that we all have experienced, it jarred our preserves.
Right.
When I say it jarred our preserves, what comes to mind for you? If you were to say, what pictures does that paint for you?
Preserves. Since I'm kind of hungry, don't get mad at me. I'm thinking about like strawberry preserve, but
no, that's good.
Yeah.
So there's that word has 2 definitions, 2 paths it could go. Just like you said, it jars our preserves. So we put it in a jar and we hunker down and we hope like heck that life will be better. Or it jars our preserves, we explode, and we take action proactively to get to somewhere else. That's why that's why I met you. That's why I've met the Megaminders, because we were all proactive, looking for something to support us as we went through this thing we didn't understand about. And if you eat too much jelly, you can have jelly belly. But that's one of the things.
For some of us during COVID, that kind of happened.
Yeah.
We ate a little bit too much.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to, if you know what you want and why you want it, why you want it, stifle how you can invent and make things happen. That's how I started the business in a non-traditional sort of way. That's how I got the software I own. That has nothing to do with coaching. It's just amazing what you can do if you set your mind to doing something. If you go after what you really, really want, you can build up the resiliency and the tenacity to be like a duck. You know, a duck is floats around on the pond, right? And it's paddling its feet below. You can't really see that, right?
Can't see it.
And the other thing the duck does is when it's raining and water gets on, the water just flows off its back. So if we can get into that state of mind, we can do anything. When I was looking for ways to creatively get a computer to help me sell the software that I acquired, now I was only the sales rep at the time, and I was looking for one, and I thought, I'm going to test this, if you know what you want and why you want it, theory out, and see if it really works. So I set a goal to go get a computer for free, a laptop, and it needed to have a decent screen, a word processor, a spreadsheet, and oh yeah, I got it for free. So people would laugh at me, Mark. People would say, "What are you, crazy? You've been smoking something?" Right? They'd laugh at me, but I didn't give sanction to the laughing. I didn't care. I just realized, oh, they're not aligned with what I'm after. I continue on my journey asking for people's help after I built Rapport Trust and all that sort of thing as well, and served them best I could at the time with what they were looking for. I asked them again, different people, the same sort of thing, and they started showing up. The first one was, you can have mine when I don't need it. And I says, that's great. When do you need it? He says, well, 8 to 5. And he said, well, that's no good. I need it 8 to 5. So I needed to get more clear, more specific, more granular on what I was asking for. So I changed it. So the next time I was carried on, and the next one showed up, I could have it 24/7. It was had a word processor, a spreadsheet, and a decent screen, I was told. And I was so excited. I thought, wow, this thing really works. I opened it up. Guess what it was? It wasn't Windows. It was DOS. I went, oh, no, I need a Windows base. So I needed to get more specific. And when I got to the specific laptop that I was looking for, doing the same process, not worrying about people laughing at me, right, asking me if I was on some kind of wacky tobacco, I carried on with what I was looking for. And lo and behold, I had one for 7 months. Not only did I get one for 7 months, I ended up meeting some wonderful people along the way with the like-minded philosophy to life, and became mentors and friends of mine along the way. So knowing what we want, why we want it, and stifling the how, being like the duck I was talking about, the water off the duck's back, helps you get to where you want to get to. If we start, I think it was Jim Rohn says, if you really want something, you'll find a way. If you don't, you'll find an excuse. So really, it's all about your choices.
Which leads me to
that's what I would say about that.
No, that's great. That's. I just love sitting here listening to you. I apologize, but the one question I was going to ask: why do people feel like they don't need coaching at all, Phil? I always like to share that because Ken Walls challenged me when he said, professionals have coaches, amateurs don't. And the reason I bring this up, what I do, what you do, I sell sales training, and you get to hear all the, I hate to call it excuse-itis or whatever you want to call it, but why they think they don't need this, thus, or so. And I don't care if you take it from me, but if you're not doing anything for yourself, I kind of got a question, how do you grow and develop? But why do you think people say, hey, I'm not interested in that, or I don't need that?
Yeah, one word: apathy.
Okay.
There's some people in our profession, and I believe there's a huge need for it as well. Some people would say there's a huge demand for what we do. I don't think that's true. Because if there was a huge demand, they'd be picking up the phone and calling a coach and signing up right away. That's not the reality of it. And if you think about in the business coaching space, at least, my experience has been, and I've got an example of a buddy of mine who hired a coach, but I'll get back to that in a minute. The apathy side of it is there's not a big demand. There is a huge need for it, but not perceived. So apathy shows up until they get to a pain point or a place where they're frustrated and they can't grow. So they're like the mosquito that you can train actually not the mosquito, a flea. You can train a flea, put them in a glass, cover it up with a clear top. They'll bounce up to the top. It's kind of like the elephant thing as well. But they fly up to the top of the glass where you put in the cellophane, the saran wrap, whatever you want to call that stuff. And then after a little bit of time, you take the top of the glass off. They still limit themselves to where they are. So a lot of people that I've come across in the first introductory sort of part of looking at coaching is they do have apathy because they don't understand what coaching can do for them. They're self-employed because they want to be in charge of their destiny, and they're probably not employable. Because of that mindset, they're not always open to having somebody else, like, who are you to tell me what I should do with my business? Which brings me back to a buddy of mine who owns a sporting goods store in this city. And we used to play hockey together, and I've known him for, I don't know, 40 years or so. And him and his brother decided that they were going to get a coach because the brothers were separating from the business, and one of them had a child. The daughter was going to take it over and be the CEO of the company. And that part of their business they'd never done before. So they retained a coach to work with them to help them through that transition period. And what they discovered was there was a bunch of things they didn't know about their business that if they had known, that would have elevated what they had created to another level, and not that hard to do or that difficult to do, by implementing things on a consistent basis, like the 1% rule. And as a result of that, even though they had created some success for themselves, had some real estate holdings, and were living a pretty good life, after working with that coach for about a 12-month period, they were amazed at what they learned from working with a coach to take them to another level that they didn't even know existed. So apathy is the one word that I would say is the resistance to having somebody coach you in a business.
That's beautiful. I'm going to steal a page out of Glenn Morshar. He, since I'm a member of the Grow Live, and by the way, I'll say hello to Lynn Serrano saying hello. Hey, Lynn. There she is. And he talked about there's like 4 rooms. He talked about the room of impossibility, possibility, probability, inevitability. And then he said each one has a theme. Well, the first the first one is the no, just flat out. If I said, hey, Coach Phil, no, you meet people like that all the time. Then he talked about possibility. He goes, maybe. And then you have like probability is like, the theme word is likely. And then obviously the last one is yes, inevitability. But I'm sure you run into those types every day of your business, and you could probably categorize them that way. But I don't like to put people in rooms, so to speak. But I just thought that was really cool the way Glenn explained it, and it kind of freed me up mentally to say, hey, it's not me, it's the individual, it's where they're at. So don't take it so personal when you hear no, or and sometimes some people do. I mean, you've probably witnessed this in your coaching. They really internalize it, and they worry what others think 24/7, and half the time they're not thinking about you or worrying about you. But could you elaborate on that, why people do those things?
Yeah, I've never heard it quite shared that way before, so that's insightful for me. That's beautiful. I'm glad I'm on the show to learn that. To me, it's all about self-image, self-concept, self-esteem. So if you can increase people's self-image to be bigger and brighter than what they perceive themselves to be, that's one of the aspects that we can help people move. So when you get a no, it's really how you process it. One of my teachers and mentors had a phrase. He said, we act in accordance not as a truth as it is, but how we perceive it to be. So when somebody says no to you, how do you internalize that? And why? And is it important, right? But if you wanted to just get past that and not do a psychotherapy session on yourself, have a bigger vision than the current reality that you're in. So look at your current reality, financial, health, relationships, and career, And if you aren't satisfied in any one of those areas, start looking at what would it look like if you didn't have the problem that you're seeing that you have in the current reality. And what would it look like if you live the life of your dreams, even though you may not know how to do it, which is not a big part of the puzzle initially. Often what I get my clients to do is actually to write their ideal life story. As I pick on a great author, and of course I'm trying to think of his name, and I use it all the time. Oh man, I forget his name now. Oh, King, that's it. So he writes beautiful fantasies. It takes you down a journey, paints a picture. So I encourage my clients to do the same thing, not to write a novel to become a movie, but to write a novel or write a story a chapter in the story of your life. What would it be like if you had all the resources? Because in this moment, it's fantasy. What would your life look like? How much money would you earn? Who would you be serving? Where would you be traveling? How many cars would you have? What kind of cars would you have? What would your relationships be like? Who would you be doing it with? What would you want to have happen with them, with you, and all of those people? Who you want to meet? All of those sort of things, and write it in a story. And then once you've done that, then you can break down the pieces and invent the way to get there. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
And then
I was just going to say, you talked about writing things, and that's some people don't even write down what they're going to do next versus a goal or anything that they aspire, they want. They're afraid to do that.
Yeah,
I think that all goes back to what you were saying about failure. The fear.
Yeah. So just to add on to that writing thing, another part of what I do with my coaching clients, and even for myself, is to, if you want to increase your ability to get stuff done, your causative power, increase your efficacy, which means get more stuff done, and increases your self-esteem and your self-image, is to make a list of 100 successes at a minimum. Do it in one sitting and think about what's the very first race that you've ever won. Play with me.
Very first race I won was probably in the neighborhood. I was probably, believe it or not, back in the day, one of the fastest kids, but I think I was like 5 or 6, and I won some sort of relay race, at our playground. Yeah, it was a big deal.
Was a big deal. And do you remember what you were wearing?
Yeah, well, then we didn't have. I didn't have gym shorts on. I had probably jeans and sneakers and a t-shirt. That's we're going back to probably like 1960 something.
Yeah. And was there some other people there that you remember that were there that were cheering you on? And
oh yeah.
Yeah. Who was there?
Some of the neighborhood kids and my family as well. So.
Cool. And you felt? How did you feel?
I felt like I was floating on cloud 9, man.
Okay, so are you feeling that, a little bit of that right now as we're talking?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I can remember it.
That's fantastic. And sorry, we're playing a game here, right? So here we go.
Right.
Wrong answer, but a really good one, but the wrong one. Right? The very first race you ever won was coming into this world. You were the only one that was born, right? And then what did you learn after that? Once you arrived in the physical plane as a human being, what did you learn? Well, you've got kids, so you can think about what your boys did, but they learned to crawl, learned to walk, and Ron's going to correct me here. Well, actually, they might be young enough, because he said the sippy cup didn't show up until 1981.
Right.
But think about it.
Have privilege to that,
Make a list of all of those successes, right? I learned to crawl, learned to walk, learned to talk, learned to get attention from mom and dad, all those sort of things. Dr. Bandura says we go through our successes way too lightly and way too quickly. And if we were to slow down just a little bit and give sanction to the things that we've done that we weren't able to do before, we'll increase our efficacy, which is our causative power, get stuff done. And then you can borrow that success, those emotions, and bring them into something else. That's how I was able to share a stage with Brian Tracy and then get my peers to say, Phil, how many times you've done that presentation? You must have done that a dozen times by now. And I went, no, I've done it once. They went, wow, only once? In the physical plane, absolutely once. In the non-physical plane, in my imagination, I'd done it 100 times. So I'd rehearsed it over and over, just like a pilot does in a flight simulator, right? Same sort of
Right.
thing. Or an
Right.
athlete. You can see the skiers that are doing that downhill racing when they're just before they go through the starter's gate. You can see they're imagining what the run looks like.
Right.
Same sort of thing, right? When I
Right.
was a goaltender in that junior team, juvenile team, I was pretty good, and I didn't really try hard at it. I was imagining and visualizing, not understanding what I was doing. I didn't learn that that's what had done it until later in life when I was introduced to reflective thinking and writing in a journal, capturing your dreams, your fears, your goals and aspirations. And you could watch the trends of your thinking by looking at the journal, see what you're thinking to yourself. And then you get to decide, is it something I want to fix or is it just garbage I want to get rid of? So
Are you
doing
telling me you were a goalie?
I was.
You were a goalie? Wow.
I was, and one of my highlights in life was in 1988 in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. We hosted the Winter Olympics, and I was my girlfriend at the time was the front office manager for a hotel, which was a blessing for me because she had tickets to all sorts of stuff. I didn't have to pay to go. But one of the highlights was, because I like hockey, we were with the American team because most of them were an entourage of the not the team itself, but the supporting cast were at her hotel. And there was a bus taking us to the Saddle Dome to watch the Russians play the Americans. The only caveat that I had to do was I had to wave an American flag. I thought that's a small price to pay to be at the Olympics and hanging out. But the big thing is, because I was a goaltender, I used to be fascinated with Bernie Perrant. And I watched how he played, and I modeled what he did when I was a young guy playing hockey. Guess who was on the bus drinking beer? Bernie Perrant.
Oh my goodness.
So I got to drink beer with Bernie. He was there as a talent scout, an agent for athletes, and that was fantastic.
Incredible.
What's he got there? I can't even read all that.
I know. He says that the ability, especially of a medicine or a method of achieving something to produce the intended result, even if it wasn't the sippy cup.
Yeah, so if you look at your prescriptions, they use the word efficacy to see
Right.
how strong it is. So what I leverage is the efficacy to help people do more stuff. So once you've done, this is a homework assignment. I'm going to check back with you, Mark, that you've actually done it. And then we'll review with you what happened for you. What did you get out of it? And then once you've done that, I'll give you part 2 of it so that you can have a tool that when you're getting those no's that you don't want and you're in the valley instead of the peaks of the mountain, you're not your most powerful self. This is a way to elevate you. So if you're looking for a way to elevate yourself and keep yourself a little bit on the higher side more often when you were previously down below, do the exercise. Let's catch up. We don't have to do a live. We can just do a Zoom call. And it's a complimentary coaching session.
No, that's cool. I appreciate that, Phil. I really do. So let me ask you this. You've done all these things, from manufacturing, printing graphics, real estate, all the healthcare. How do you deal with, and I hate using the word failure because I think we just learn from things. I don't consider something, if you get to a no, I know in the hard, fast rule out there, oh, you failed. But I look at it as a learning, opportunity. How do you deal with, negatives, in your life?
Yeah, a couple of ways is that second part of the exercise. I promise if you do the first part, you'll learn how to do that. So you can make it second nature for you. So you can elevate yourself where you had a fail. And if you look at fail as an acronym, if you're looking for a quick something to look at, it's really cool. And I didn't come up with it. I'm just leveraging. Fail is really first attempt in learning. You don't know what you didn't know. Now you know some stuff. Go do it different.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. So why did you, or what did you learn from Brian Tracy? I mean, did you ever get a chance to really sit down with him and talk with him at all? Or, what were some things that you picked up? I remember back in the day, I had this cassette tape. I'm dating myself, Psychology of Selling,
I have that,
yeah,
but not on cassette.
Yeah, I actually
an MP3.
I'm embarrassed to tell you, I still have that cassette somewhere here in this office. But
well, that's good. That's good. So the question was, did I ever spend any time with Brian Tracy? And the answer is yes, on several occasions. The first time was in the early 80s when he was starting off with his executive, I forget now the name of the company, executive something. Anyway, he had started doing his Phoenix seminar. And the Phoenix seminar was a 2-day workshop seminar on a Saturday, Sunday. And he took you through the psychology, which morphed into the psychology of achievement. And he said that the 3 things, if you stop doing this, you'll drop weight. Well, actually, 2 things you need to do: eat less, work out more, so be more active. But there's 3 things that if you took this off your list of foods to eat, they're all white: salt, starch, potatoes, pastas, and breads, right? If you stop, and sugar, I think was, so that's 4.
Yeah,
if you stop ingesting that stuff, you'll drop weight. So we were going for a lunch break one day. I don't know, it must have been on the second day. And he came over into the restaurant of the hotel we were at, and he grabbed a couple of my French fries because he said he never eats French fries. So he hates them. But I didn't challenge him, I think, at that time. But I was going through some certification training for the sales program that he created, and I train people on as train the trainers as well as my clients go through that. We were in San Diego at the Westin Hotel. I think it's on the Harborfront Road or Boulevard. I think I might have that wrong, guys. Apologize. But
was it Nightingale Conant? Is that what you were referring to?
No.
Okay.
No. So when I was in, we went through the certification process. He came in, surprise guest for us, and they showed an audio program, a DVD actually, which I have. It's called Many Miles to Go. If you get a chance to read the book, read it. It's one of Brian's best written books, I think, the journey of how he got to South Africa and all the lessons he learned. So they were showing him talking to the million dollar club in the insurance business, and they were playing that for us as a kind of a treat because we just got through the training. Then there was a ruckus behind the video screen, and in this hotel they had a door at the front where we came in and a door at the back, and I thought it was housekeeping coming in and disturbing us. Well, it wasn't. They were bringing Brian Tracy in, and we got to talk to him directly. So when he sat down and he said, you can ask some questions, being the shy person I am, I always sit at the front of the room anyway. And so I was the first person to ask him some questions. I asked him 2 things. One circles back to what I started out with. And the other one was when I was in the Phoenix seminar, he talked about how things change. First of all, when we set a target, a goal, or an affirmation or a declaration, there's a big D of disbelief. And as we think about it and see ourselves at our future best as it's something that's believable, that D becomes smaller if you were to imagine drawing out these Ds. And then as we get to the middle, or what's going to be the middle, when we get to the smallest D, we start to get a little B, and a little bit bigger B. And the B stands for belief. And I was reminding him about that. And I said, Brian, I don't know if this was you or not. It was ingenious, but was this you that turned into a bow tie? And he said, yeah, he talked about that for 10 minutes to the group and answered my question, because I don't have it anywhere else other than my live experience with him in the 80s. And then the other thing I said, oh yeah, and Brian, when we were in this particular hotel in Calgary where I live, and you came and did the Phoenix seminar in the early days, you told us that you don't eat French fries. And I said, I wanted to let you know that you're not being totally truthful. You eat them, you just don't pay for them. And he had a great laugh. So yeah, I hung up with
Yeah, that's a great story. So let me ask you this. We talked about like what's now, what's new, what's next for you, Phil? I mean, we all have gone through COVID. We've had to deal with things, and we all hear the negativity that's out there in the real world. And, some industries are struggling about you can't go back, and there is validity to that statement.
Yeah.
So where do you see us as a society? Like people are working at home, companies. Will they allow their people to remain on a virtual level, or do they want them to come back to the brick and mortar institution? Or are people craving to do that? Or what do you think?
I think it's a hybrid of everything you threw into that one question.
Right.
For an example, when we had our conference last April virtual, it's the first virtual one we'd ever done. And one of the coaches came on and presented to all of us as coaches, and he's out of Phoenix. And there was a resistance to going virtual by many industries, and one was that he was working with as a financial services company. They had it on their goals list, targets, objectives to do was to build another high-rise building in the Phoenix area. And they allocated $30 million to build it. And they were really resistant to have people work from home because they felt that the people would not work as effectively and their metrics would drop. Well, COVID comes along and they are forced to adjust and do business differently or go out of business. So they adjusted. And what they were surprised to find out was that they got more stuff done. They were able to service and help more people, which means they made larger revenue and their profits were higher. Guess what they're not building? A $30 million building. They're going to invest in better technology and training for their people so they can provide a higher level of service.
Tremendous.
And so I just looked at the clock. There's a whole bunch of other stories like that. For me personally, in my own marketplace, COVID slowed down the opportunities that I've been fostering and nurturing. But this is going to be the most amazing year ever that I've had in coaching, and it's only January.
That is outstanding. You probably have people knocking on your door.
Well, not quite because they're not allowed to come out. But they want to, right? They want to.
Well, Phil, I really enjoyed speaking with you this evening, and I don't want you to go anywhere, but I'm going to close this out. It was great to get your insight. I truly mean that. And I thank you for the tip that you just gave me, and we can talk about it behind the stage here. So don't go anywhere. I'm going to end this out, and I just want to say thank you so much for being here this evening. Tremendous.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome, sir. Well, folks, there you have it. A coach's coach, Coach Phil. And like they say, everybody needs a coach. We think we don't need one. But the bottom line is we do. We all need help. And sometimes it pays dividends to have somebody from the outside looking in at your particular situation and tweak a couple things, make a couple suggestions, and you'll be totally amazed at what can take place. And I think it's really neat to see Phil on his program. If you ever go out there and take a look, and by the way, I'm just going to put this up here for people who want to say, hey, how do I get a hold of this guy? Or you can go to these different like Facebook, LinkedIn, it's all here. ProfitAndGrowBusinessMaster.com. Phil Jilks, focal point and teaching. It's all there. The best thing to do is go on his Facebook page and you can pull up all this information. He's got a lot of cool stuff, particularly on the focal point coaching and training. So, and with that, I'm going to say thank you to everybody for being here. I hope you got something out of this in terms of the content. It was worth your 40 minutes or so invested. And like I tell everybody on the message, Mark's message, be a leader, be a friend, be a service. And Peachtree Corners, you are welcome anytime. If you have a platform, a business, something you want to discuss, a cause, feel free to hit me up. You're right here in Peachtree Corners. All you folks over here in the Peachtree Corners Business Association, let's hook up and let's talk about it. And again, everybody, I'm going to do this because I love baseball. If you and I together in the batter's box of life, if we work together and make the appropriate approach and keep swinging for the fences, we will eventually, boom, knock it out of the park. Once again, this was Mark Gassert. Mark's message, Peachtree Corners, Georgia, the peachiest place on the planet, and I shall see you tomorrow. Thank you so much, everybody, for being with us this evening.